My name is Rapunzel. Yes, yes, you are not mistaken. I was so called, as you already understand, because of my gorgeous hair. Only then, and something has changed in my life. Well, there's a new Rapunzel, who is hairless. Now, I will tell you about myself, and at the same time about my family, in which my mother shaved everyone. This happened a few years ago. My parents, my sister Abby, and my brother Charles went on vacation to Goa, India. Oh, it was amazing. You can't imagine what a sight it is. The country itself is quite interesting. It has a lot of contrasts, both among people and districts. If you don't know, it's mostly just the poor or the rich. The average is not given. There are beautiful scenic spots, as well as areas where people empty themselves on the streets. In some quarters, there are rats running around. Everywhere is mud and a terrible stench, and somewhere, everything is washed to a shine. We spent a wonderful 10 days there, and it seemed that there could not be a better summer. But already on the last day, I suddenly felt ill. I had terrible abdominal pain. I clutched my stomach and writhed in pain as if I'd been kicked there. I thought I couldn't even straighten up. My mother gave me various medications for spasms, painkillers, but they did not help for long. My father had already suggested that I was affected by the local climate and unsanitary conditions, and it was decided to fly home ahead of time. I didn't want to spoil my vacation, but I had no choice, because there are also problems with medicine there. When I got home, I got even worse, and we went straight to the hospital. I was examined for several hours. I thought it was just intestinal poisoning, like I ate something wrong, but looking at the doctors who gathered a whole consultation over me, I woke up with anxiety. I had to pass a bunch of tests. I don't even remember that at all. When I passed so much in my life, I was forced to swallow a tube to see everything from the inside. Ugh, that was awful. And then I asked why my poisoning was so interesting. "Are you looking at me because I ate something in India?" I asked, laughing, but the doctors weren't smiling. Then I looked at the doctor, who was talking to my parents in the hallway. For some reason, my mother screamed and started crying, and my father covered his face with his hands and blushed. My heart began to pound in my chest, and the unknown became the most frightening thing. As a result, when my parents came to the ward, I asked what the doctors had said to them. My mother spoke inarticulate words for a long time and did not look me in the eye. Then my younger brother blurted out, "Punsley," as he called me, "are you hiding cancer? The doctor said you have it." "What?" I asked. "I have cancer?" At that moment, I was thrown into sweats, my hands were shaking, my eyes were dark, and I began to choke. I was immediately brought water, but I could not drink. I kept thinking about my health, about the short life that was behind me, and immediately imagined how much I had not yet had time to see. "I've never even had a boyfriend. I'm only 17 years old," I thought. Next to me, my parents were crying, holding back their tears, but it was my mother who did the worst. The doctor tried to cheer me up, saying that this is not the end, that I have a chance because of my young age and growing body. But it didn't help me. It turned out that cancer cells woke up in me during the flight. A small amount of radiation provoked them and woke them up. My father cursed our journey 100 times. I started crying. I felt sorry for myself and my family. I never would have thought that I would suddenly have this terrible disease. In short, after this news, I started a new life full of medical procedures. The hospital provided me with a separate room, but at least because I was still underage, most of the treatment was free. Everything was covered by insurance. So I moved some things from home. Almost every morning, I gave blood and drank medicine. I was put on IVS. First, I tried immunotherapy, which lasted 3 months, but the results were disappointing. Later, it was decided to prescribe chemotherapy. You know, a lot of things have changed in my life over the past few months. First of all, I never went back to school. And secondly, my parents have aged before my eyes. Even my brother Charles already knows what a syringe and the word chemotherapy means, although he is only 3 years old. Before my first chemotherapy, I was very worried and then realized that it was not for nothing. It was a terrible procedure, or rather, as its consequences. I had a terrible hangover. I was vomiting, dizziness, loss of appetite, consciousness, spasms in my body. You can't think of a worse one. I was assigned 5 such procedures to start with. After the first one, after a while, I was discharged home, and I just came to the hospital for chemo. I noticed changes in my body. When I got home and finally took a shower, I saw myself naked in the mirror for the first time in a long time. Nightmare. Both my hands were bruised from the endless injections and IVs. I was very thin. There were bruises under my eyes. But the most annoying thing was that my beautiful, bright, shiny hair had begun to fall out, as well as my eyebrows and eyelashes. I was hysterical. I hated my body. I was disgusted. My mother calmed me down as best she could for months, until I finally went completely bald. The doctor told me not to fade away and buy wigs, but I didn't want them. Wigs couldn't replace my beautiful hair. I just put on a striped hat and raced in it from morning to night. This hat was made for me by my girlfriend. You know, I even accepted that I was ill, but I couldn't accept that I was like this. My parents' reassurances didn't help, and I didn't even want to hear the lies that I was still pretty. Until one day, when I woke up and went down to the kitchen for breakfast, I saw my family waiting for me. Bald. Everyone was hairless. My parents, Abby, even Charles. I was suddenly bursting with laughter, and I couldn't stop for a long time. My family was confused at first, and then they started laughing with me. "Oh my God, are you all crazy?" I asked, to which I was told that not only was I so beautiful, that others also want to stand out from the crowd. Suddenly, the laughter stopped and I burst into tears. But no, they were tears of happiness. For the first time in a long time, I felt happy because I realized how dear my family was, that they didn't leave me, and that I was important to them. My mother came up with this idea and shaved everyone herself. So we walked down the street and attracted the eyes of people from the outside. Of course, my hair will grow over time, and so will theirs. I'm still sitting in chemo, continuing the battle with my insidious enemy. But now it's much easier for me, just because I feel this big support from my family. Well, we will win the rest together.
Hello everyone, my name is Cole. I'm from Mexico. We've been living in Spain for many years. I have a large family, parents, grandmother, and 2 brothers and sisters. I am the eldest child in the family, so I have a lot of responsibility for the younger ones. And I am also the head of the family after my father. In short, I mean that any important decisions in the house are not made without me. I even take part in the discussion of buying a TV in the living room, you know? So, my father had some problems at work. He had to either quit himself or they would have fired him. He was very upset because he supported the whole family. At the next family meeting, I made a rough calculation and offered to go to another city, buy a new house, find a job in the same field where my father worked, and start a new life. My father didn't tell anyone, except me, that he was being forced out of his job because he was now being replaced by a man with a criminal past. His pride didn't allow him to admit it. So we came up with a plan to move out of the city. And since my grandmother, grandfather, and mother especially listened to my opinion, it was decided to move. We chose a city far away from where we lived, sold our house and apartment. With these funds, we bought one big house, as my mother always dreamed, and even had enough money for a car. We were lucky with the purchase of real estate. Just realtors told us that the owner of the apartment has long left and sells up to cheap. It was amazing that we got it, but we were happy. We managed to choose a wonderful quiet area. In front of the house, there was a nice facade. The house had 2 floors, each with a room, a small courtyard on the street where my mother was going to build a summer kitchen. In general, although not the capital, but with amenities. For about a month, we equipped the rooms, the kitchen, made a summer house, and even bought a dog for the younger ones. We had a housewarming party in a small family circle, and then Dad got a job, and things got even better. I found an easy part-time job, and visited the Old People's Club every day to socialize. Thus, each of us chose an activity to our liking. One weekend, my father suggested that we go to his brother's house for the weekend. Everyone agreed, but I decided to stay. After seeing everyone off on a Saturday morning, I took the dog and went for a little walk with him to the store, bought ham, milk, eggs, and bread. There was nothing to eat at home. I left the groceries in the kitchen, went to the bedroom, changed my clothes, and when I came out, there was an empty bag on the table. I didn't know what the hell it was. The dog was in the room with me. Were they thieves? Then why do they need my products? I thought. Just in case, armed with a stun gun, I went through all the rooms with the dog. But everything was clean. Then I ordered a pizza, didn't finish it, left it on the table, and fell asleep. When I woke up a couple of hours later, the remnants were gone. It began to frighten me. I sat in the kitchen all day that day, but there was no one and nothing. At night, I installed my dad's old camera in the kitchen and went to sleep. What I saw the next day was shocking. A man broke into the house and stole my food, and he knew every corner of it. But I couldn't figure out where it went because the exit was on the other side. I dragged the camera to the front door the next night and then saw the man coming out into the backyard. I took the same stun gun with me and found the place where the man got out. Wow, I didn't even know we had a basement on this street. You can't even see it just like that. It was so well camouflaged. To be honest, I was terrified. I called a friend, and Carl arrived 15 minutes later. He brought my mother's pepper spray. I took my father's taser and flashlight, and we carefully opened the door and went downstairs. We did this very slowly, looking at everything around us step by step. When at last we were completely submerged in the basement, my dog beat us to it. She ran down, and we heard screams. Carl and I looked at each other and ran after the dog. A long corridor appeared in front of us, where everything was more or less arranged. Walls, ceiling, electricity. Running a little further, we saw a small room where our dog was standing, growling menacingly at the crowd of people. I shone the flashlight in their faces and saw 2 adults in front of me, a man and a woman, and 2 children. The children were particularly scared. I got the impression that they have been living there for a very long time. The light was dim enough, and the light from the flashlight made them close their eyes and cover their faces. After I chased the dog away, we just stared at each other. This family was so wild. They were dirty, scared. I noticed a pizza box on their table. "Did you steal my food?" I asked them loudly. They were startled by the voice. I repeated the question, but they were silent. Then Carl said he was going to call the police. Wait, the man shouted. "Yes, it would be me. I stole your food for the family. Please forgive me," he added. The longer we stood there and stared at each other, the more questions popped into my head. I told them all to go upstairs to talk. These people were not aggressive, but rather scared. They got up and went out into the courtyard. I stared at them, Carl holding the taser in plain sight, just in case. Then the man started talking fast and fast. "Mister, please don't hurt my family. It's my fault for stealing the food. We used to always eat food from the trash, but this time I couldn't resist the goodies you bought. The fact is that no one has lived in this house for a long time," he said. Then I learned from our long conversation that this used to be their home. Once upon a time, they took out a loan that they could not pay, and as a deposit, they left a house that they later lost. But this was not enough, and they still owed money to some friends. I built this basement a long time ago, in case of war or something. No one knew about it. When we realized that we had no money, no home, nothing, the only solution was to hide, he said. So they were stuck there for many years, and for how long, they do not remember. Carl and I were shocked, of course. I didn't blame them, because anything can happen, but it was impossible to live like this. At that moment, my family returned. They were happy after the trip. When they saw I was sitting with Carl on a summer holiday and strange homeless people were sitting with us, my mother's eyes were full of indignation. I fed and watered the family, gave them clean clothes, and offered them a bath. After they cleaned up, my parents talked to them. Oddly enough, but they are not angry. For some reason, we took their word for it and wanted to help. My mother called a special service where you could live for free for a while. We gave them some money and left a phone number. They called us the next day when the police found them. We also gave evidence and said that we have no complaints. The father promised to help find a job for that man, but in the meantime, this family also needs psychological support. After all, a woman with children did not go out at all, and who knows how long. From that moment on, we helped them as much as we could. Of course, not immediately, but over time, they came to their senses and began to lead a normal lifestyle.